Hello everybody and welcome back to another Which Game is Better Assassin's Creed video. If you're new here and unfamiliar with how this series works, what I do is take two games from the same series and compare them in three different categories: story, gameplay, and open world. Within each category, I have multiple points that I will display on screen now, and whichever game I feel does that particular point better earns a point, and the game with the most points by the end is the winner. Pretty straightforward. In this edition, we are doing two fairly similar games: AC Black Flag versus AC Rogue. Now, it's definitely worth pointing out that Rogue did take quite a lot out of Black Flag's book, especially in terms of gameplay, so fair warning, there's going to be quite a few ties for some of the points in this video, since some things in Black Flag and Rogue are exactly the same. So in the case of a tie, I'll just give each game 1 point. So I hope that all makes sense, and as always, this comparison is all my opinion, and feel free to leave which game you think is better and why down in the comments. But without further ado, Assassin's Creed Black Flag versus Assassin's Creed Rogue.
Round 1, fight!
Starting out with the story category, let's talk about the protagonists from each game. Of course, for Black Flag being Edward Kenway, and for Rogue, Shay Cormac. Now, just putting it out there, I really like both of these games' protagonists. Edward initially is a greedy pirate whose story is all about finding a bigger purpose and goal in life, and becoming selfless rather than selfish. While Shay is an assassin turned Templar who must hunt down his former friends and colleagues in order to save the world from the assassin's naivety. Both characters undergo lots of inner conflict throughout their stories, and both have phenomenal voice acting, I might add. Edward Kenway, in terms of personality, feels very similar to an Ezio. Very charming and quick-witted, he's a very likable character, and very easy for players to rally behind. You want him to succeed and become a better person as the circumstances of the story shape and develop his character. Shay, I think, is a little bit more divided. Of course, he doesn't have that super likable personality, which I think is totally okay in my opinion. I always say this, but not every character needs to be Ezio. But he's also divided because he betrays the assassins and becomes a Templar after Achilles orders him to remove the precursor box from Lisbon, causing the destruction of the city and the deaths of thousands of innocent lives. Shay views it as Achilles forced him to murder tons of innocent people, and he decides to steal the manuscript and escape so the assassins can't wreak havoc anymore. Even though me and most players are on the assassin side usually in the series, I think most of us can agree with Shay here. This version of the assassins around AC3 and Rogue, especially under Achilles' leadership, is very different to the one we're used to, and it's not so much that they're evil and trying to kill these innocent people, but they're just very clueless and arrogant, messing with things they don't understand. Everyone might not agree with Shay and his actions, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I personally still found Shay a fascinating protagonist. However, since Rogue's story is so short, perhaps we don't get to see enough of him as we need to have him stack up with some of the series' best protagonists, like I consider Edward to be. I really like Shay as a protagonist. I think he's super interesting, and obviously being the only Templar protagonist of the series makes him super unique, not to mention he has one of the coolest voices ever.
I could not have imagined what the future had in store for me, nor the cost I would choose to bear.
However, I'm going to give the edge here to Edward Kenway. I love Edward's story and journey throughout Black Flag. It's another pretty unique story for the series since he's not an assassin for a large majority of it. However, it makes sense, unlike some of the newer games where we don't play as assassins at all. Edward is a character that needs to grow and develop before he becomes an assassin, and I think Black Flag's story did that very well, so the first point will go to Black Flag. Next, let's talk about the cast of characters surrounding the protagonist. Again, both of these stories are very strong, and a big part of that are the characters. In Black Flag, Edward has countless friends and acquaintances in the story who either provide some fun comic relief like Stede Bonnet, or help shape and influence him into the character he turns into, with people like Blackbeard, Hornigold, Adewale, and especially James Kidd. There's also the Templars like Governor Torres, who kind of serves as one of the game's antagonists. He wasn't necessarily a bad antagonist, but he's a lot more generic, especially when compared to the Templars of Rogue. I'm really partial to the characters in Rogue because it takes so many from previous AC titles. We have Haytham Kenway, who might just be my favorite character in the entire series. We have a younger Achilles, of course, before we see him all crippled, old, and broken in AC3, and we even have Adewale from Black Flag and Freedom Cry. Some of the new characters are bland and forgettable, with the exception of, I think, Hope and Liam, two of Shay's former good friends who he's forced to hunt down when he defects to the Templars. You can really see his inner conflict and struggle when he's forced to hunt down his former friends, and those two really bring out a lot of great character moments from Shay. I really love how Haytham and Achilles were portrayed in this game. It really feels like a proper prequel to AC3 and allows you to better understand the characters in AC3 and what exactly happened beforehand that caused the assassins to be all but gone and the Templars to be in full control under Haytham's leadership. I said this in my AC Rogue review, but it also makes me really like Connor Kenway's role more because he's the one who brings the assassins back to what they should be, the kind of assassins we're used to, and not the corrupted and naive ones under Achilles' leadership. I also love how they used Adewale, and as a big fan of both AC3 and Black Flag, of course, seeing that interaction between Adewale and Haytham was great. Black Flag has some great characters that do a lot for the story, but Rogue has so many great characters packed into its story that not only makes Rogue better, but makes AC3 and even Unity better as well. So the point for me is going to Rogue. Next, we have the plot from both games. Like I said earlier, Black Flag is about Edward, a very bitter and selfish man, and his 9-year journey and transformation into becoming someone who can be selfless and fight for a cause bigger than himself and money. It's a great journey to watch unfold and feels really well developed. Rogue's plot is about flipping the script and showing us that the assassins are not always the good guys in the conflict and the Templars aren't always bad. Rogue adds a lot more layers and dimensions to the assassins versus Templar conflict and really forces the player to see that neither side is right or wrong. I do agree to an extent that the game might make the assassins seem a little too evil sometimes, especially since all this could have been avoided if Achilles wasn't so arrogant and listened to Shay from the start, which at the end he comes to believe anyway, so I don't know why it took him so long to realize that. There is an explanation through some lines between Shay and Liam while you're on the Morrigan about how Achilles had never been the same since his son Connor died, which I wish they delved into more because it would better explain why Achilles acts the way he does in Rogue. All in all, I still really like Rogue's plot. Again, it's super unique and interesting for the series. I just wished it was a little longer and more developed, because it also kind of bothers me that Shay is never really exposed to the more ruthless, darker side of the Templars we've seen in the other games. Like, sure, the Templars may be more agreeable and understandable during Rogue, but they're still by no means complete saints. I'm going to give the point to Black Flag. It feels more fleshed out and better developed. However, given more time, I think Rogue's story could have been even better than it already is, and perhaps Shay would be a better character to a lot of people. The modern day storyline follows the same first-person structure in both games. You also play as a different mute employee in the same Abstergo building. Black Flag's modern day is picking up the pieces after what happened at the end of AC3, as you slowly start to figure out what's going on in Abstergo. While in Rogue, you're tasked with discovering all of Shay's story and hindering the modern day assassins. Personally, I enjoy the modern day from Black Flag more. It feels a little more important to the overall story and what happened since AC3, while what happens in Rogue's modern day is pretty much never brought up again, so I'll give the point to Black Flag.
Round 2, fight!
Like I said at the beginning of the video, gameplay is going to be quite hard to compare because the games are so similar. Rogue does have some changes and new additions, but some of them are so minor that I don't really know if it warrants getting the point over Black Flag. For example, the air rifle, which is kind of a glorified version of the blow darts. The combat is pretty much exactly the same, however Shay uses a sword and dagger combo with some different animations, while Edward uses the dual swords. However, everything aside from that is the same. The the same counter kill system with breaking guard and chaining kills and all of that. I really like the combat systems in these games, however they are too similar to give a point to either game, so combat will be a tie. As for stealth, it's very similar, same animations, same cover system, however Rogue does have some new tools and gadgets. Like I said, the air rifle is still pretty much a glorified version of the blow darts from Black Flag, however there's now firecracker darts and a grenade launcher that allows you to affect multiple enemies in an area with sleep, berserk, and shrapnel grenades. I don't think that's quite enough still to give the point to Rogue, however I believe the enemy types are. What I really enjoy about Rogue's gameplay, and it's probably the best new gameplay addition in general, are the assassin stalkers. You're playing as a Templar now, so you're killing assassins, and it makes sense that these assassin enemies fight in very similar ways that we do as players, hiding and trying to assassinate from the shadows. The stalkers add an extra element to the stealth as you must constantly be aware and ready for them whenever they are nearby and try and get the drop on them. It's definitely one of my favorite enemy types in the series, so I'll give stealth to Rogue over Black Flag. As for parkour, again, pretty much exactly the same, even in terms of the animations, so we'll give another tie there. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but again, it's very similar for both games in naval combat. The cannons are the same, the boarding process and choosing whether or not to repair, remove wanted level, or add to your fleet, that's the same. Even the little fleet side hustle with the ship battle mini games and trade routes are the same. However, Rogue does have a lot of minor changes that I really enjoy in naval combat. Being able to actually charge with your ship at ramming speed is a really nice change for both maneuverability and making the ram more useful. I like the addition of burning oil over the fire barrels. I think it's a lot more effective. It also looks really cool. Same deal with the puckle guns, which are automatic instead of the slow firing swivels from Black Flag. It's also a nice touch that your ship can actually be boarded by enemies when they ram into the side of the Morrigan. Again, these aren't huge changes, but they were nice to have, so I'll give the slight edge to Rogue on this one. As for customization, there's significantly more customization across the board in Black Flag. More outfits, more weapon variants, more customization options for the Jackdaw over the Morrigan. I also really liked some of the armor sets in Black Flag. Having to collect the Mayan artifacts from the puzzles for the Mayan armor that's actually bulletproof, as well as unlocking the Templar armor with the keys from the Templar Hunt side quest. There's just generally a lot more customization and options, and more incentive to earn money and unlock stuff, so this point will go to Black Flag.
Final round. Fight!
That finally brings us to the last category, the open world. Our first point will be the setting. Black Flag taking place in the West Indies and Caribbean in the early 1700s, featuring the three main cities of Havana, Kingston, and Nassau. Black Flag has some very stunning and vibrant locations, and the world allows for a very freeing and immersive structure. Rogue takes place during the 7 Years' War, spanning across multiple areas in North America, such as the North Atlantic, the Appalachian River Valley, as well as New York and Albany. Now, Rogue's setting isn't one of the most memorable in the series, but I do think it's quite underrated. Now, I definitely don't think it's quite as good and memorable as Black Flag's, of course. That setting was phenomenal, but I still really enjoy Rogue's setting. I like how most of it takes place in a lot of snowy areas with icebergs in the water. Also, a city like New York that we got to see in AC3 as well, which I thought was cool. It's a good setting, but again, Black Flag is probably one of the best in the series, with so many great locations, so the point will go to Black Flag. Both games are quite similar in world design and structure, the main difference being Black Flag's world is a lot bigger and more spread out, creating a more freeing feeling in the player. Both feature numerous cities and islands to explore, but again, this feels a lot more fleshed out in Black Flag. I also prefer the cities in Black Flag. Havana specifically is extremely well designed. It's great for parkour and traversal, not to mention looks very colorful and immersive visually. Rogue's world is a lot smaller and more condensed, which isn't actually a bad thing, but with the same structure as Black Flag, it kind of just feels like a lesser version of Black Flag's open world. That brings us to side quests and activities, and again, like most of everything else, the two games are very similar. However, Black Flag just offers more. I like the Templar side quest thread and how you get the Templar armor afterwards. That's unique to Black Flag. However, the legendary ship battles, forts, even the plantations and settlements are all present consistent in both games. Black Flag has assassination contracts since you're helping the assassins, while Rogue has assassination interceptions as you must stop the assassins from killing a target, which I thought was pretty cool as it goes with the Templar theme. However, it does get really repetitive after you play it a few times. Rogue did add the gang headquarters, which is unique to the game, where you usually have to kill an assassin leader and cut down a flag or something. Both worlds feature lots of collectibles, treasure maps, artifacts where you can unlock certain gear and rewards. They both have the fleet minigame and the ability to renovate different shops and areas. I'm going to give this point to Black Flag. It has more to offer, and even though most of it is the same in Rogue, Black Flag has some more story-driven side quests as well. I am going to include the soundtracks in this, even though it's not technically under the open world category. I still feel it's worth talking about because a good soundtrack can be very important and is often overlooked in video games. Obviously, everyone's preference is different, and I really love both of these games' soundtracks. I really like Rogue's version of Ezio's Family. However, Black Flag has a lot of great scores that fit the pirate theme. I'd give the slight edge to Black Flag for the soundtrack, but again, it's all opinion based. This leaves us with a final score of AC Black Flag 10 and AC Rogue 5, leaving Assassin's Creed Black Flag as the winner and the better game in my opinion.
Victory.
This doesn't mean I don't like Rogue or anything. In fact, I said in my review of it that it's very underrated, but it doesn't stack up to Black Flag in my opinion. Especially with Rogue borrowing most of the gameplay and structure from it. But again, that's just my opinion. Feel free to leave down in the comments which game you think is better and why. Also, if you haven't noticed, I now have memberships on the channel. You can join if you want special perks like exclusive badges and emotes, as well as seeing my videos early before they're public, and even an on-screen shout out at the end of my videos for those of you who choose the mentor membership. It's also a great way to support me in the channel if you'd like. Of course, you don't have to. I appreciate the support regardless. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel if you're new. And other than that, thanks for watching everyone, and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.